Welcome on to another edition of Play It Through, and this edition is Tagin Dragon, brought to us by Bunch Games. Bunch Games was just one of 3 different names that Color Dreams went by during the NES era to release a slew of unlicensed titles. They released them under the names of Color Dreams, they had a series of religious-based games under the name Wisdom Tree, and then Bunch Games. This was decided later on, after Color Dreams had already started to gain a reputation for not-so-great quality games. They decided to start putting out some new games, but under a different label, hoping that the stigma wouldn't carry over. There was only 5 games released under the Bunch Games label, and these were mostly games taken from other regions. In this case, Tagin Dragon is from a Taiwanese company known as Sachen, who released a lot of unlicensed games in that region. They took their game known as Colorful Dragon and changed it into Tagin Dragon that we're playing today. So, here we go with Tagin Dragon for the NES. As we start the game, you can do it 1 or 2 players, as well as a versus mode that you can go against your friend. The game is broken up into 20 different mazes with one goal in mind, and that's just to eat the tails of the other dragons on the screen. That's all there really is to the gameplay. You're moving around the maze. It's very difficult to control your dragon. You'll take a while to get used to the kind of snapping that you need to do around a lot of the corners in order to get into small hallways. A lot of times, these smaller corridors I end up skipping over and not being able to go down when I want to because the dragon just doesn't want to cooperate. If you're able to successfully eat the tails of all the other dragons on screen, the door will open and you'll be able to move on to the next round. There's not a whole lot else going on other than you and the dragons. There are a few other types of squares, like ice, that will have you sliding around. The standard grass tiles here, hedges, which you can see are these green squares, we're able to actually destroy them if we pick up one of the magic lanterns. Also, there are these solid metal blocks, which you can see at the bottom of the screen, those we cannot destroy, and then the timed death squares. If we stay on those red and blue squares for too long, we end up dying. It's just one of those weird things in the game, so you have to constantly keep moving if you're going to walk across them. The thing with this game, though, is after hours and hours and hours of playing it, there really isn't a solid strategy. There are a few different ways you can kind of approach things. Sneaking from around the corner is probably your best bet. A lot of times it's recommended that you don't walk directly over them, but I found for the most part when walking over one of the other dragons, if you're also pressing the attack button, you'll have more than likely a chance of biting them before they end up biting you, and this pretty much goes throughout most of the game. Each of the dragons in the levels have a slightly shorter or longer tail, with a maximum of like 3 bites being needed in order to actually defeat one of these dragons. The same goes for you though. You can kind of see where your tail's at, and you are able to kind of build that up and tell if you're getting relatively low on health. Also in the lower left corner is the time limit, as each stage has one of those as well as the amount of lives we currently still have. When going after the tails of the other dragons, one thing to also keep in mind is being directly on top of the tail won't work. In fact, you want to be like a pixel or so behind the tail or behind them in order to actually truly have a chance at being able to bite at their tail. Because of that lax hit detection, I got frustrated quickly at trying to come up with a concrete strategy of catching up with these guys, sneaking up on them, and then I found I just had as much luck just running after them and walking over them and just tapping the attack button or bite button as I walked over them. Once I did that for a little while and realized I was having more success this way than actually trying to stalk out each of the enemies, this just became the normal way I played from then on. When on one of the levels that is filled with ice, like this one, you can also use that to really help you out. While you slide on it, you don't go all the way across automatically, you're able to stop every few steps, so you're able to kind of go fast for just a moment, usually able to chomp a tail, and then be able to get out of the way before he's able to attack you. So I found the ice actually to be helpful more than hurtful a lot of times. If you're lucky, sometimes you can also get the enemies to kind of bunch up in one spot, and if they're on top of one another, you can still bite one and actually hit multiple of them. This will allow me sometimes to quickly destroy more than one dragon at the very beginning of one of these levels. Other times it can also be really tricky, like right now I'm trying to just get through that middle column, but I was unable to, so I had to wait for him to come back to me, and then finally I was able to track him down and finish him off. You can also use the cans to help you out. Destroying a bush by picking up one of these cans will allow you to also kind of get the jump or maybe a more strategic approach to some of the dragons, if you want to take that approach at least. It's probably because of the similar colors as well as just the whole maze theme, but this game always reminded me of Muppets Chaos at the Carnival, the Fozzie levels where you're going through the ice cream mazes. Just very similar, of just rows and rows of mazes that you had to do in that game. One of the most boring levels in all the NES titles. This is a pretty interesting level overall. There's a ton of ice in the center, and everything else is one of those death-timed squares. So make sure you either hang out on the ice or you move quickly along the death squares so that you don't stay too long and end up dying that way. Even with the ice and running over them, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to finally land that final bite, but we move on to level 14. There's only a total of 20 different rounds here. The 2-player mode in the game is the same 20 levels, it's just that you have 2 players going at once. And you can also, of course, do the versus mode if you want to do that against a friend. So at least this game has a bit more going for it than some of the other Color Dreams and other unlicensed titles that came out on the NES. I will say though that at least Tagin Dragon doesn't play as bad as a lot of the other Color Dreams and Bunch games. Of course, it's probably due to the fact it was developed by someone different in Sachen instead of Color Dreams themselves, but still, at least this game is a bit more playable, even if it is very, very boring and bland. Nearing the end of the game here, we have only a few more rounds here. We're going to end up going up here and destroying a couple of these hedges, and you have a very confined area, and because of this it can be very difficult to actually bite the tails off the remaining dragons in this stage. Compared to the very compact stage we just did, stage 18 is much more open, so thankfully we have a better chance of tracking down these couple of dragons and move on to level 19. Level 19 is a pretty fun one. There's a lot of very small hallways, lots of death squares, but thankfully the dragons immediately started coming towards us, so we're able to easily finish off the first ones on the right and then finish off the ones coming down the left side. Onwards to the final screen. There's no boss battle or story or anything else to set it up. It's just a pretty standard level, in fact even easier than some of the other levels we've done recently. Once we finish this up though and go through the exit, we can sit back and enjoy the, well, I guess you could call it an ending, I guess, to Tagin Dragon for NES. So there you have it guys, Tagin Dragon for the NES. I will say that I like the artwork at the end a lot better than the artwork that we see at the title screen, like right there. It just, I don't know, that artwork at the very beginning of the game was kind of a bit weird to me always. Thankfully though, Tagin Dragon isn't one of the most expensive of the unlicensed NES titles, costing roughly about $50 to $60 if you're just trying to get a cart, but honestly it really is not worth anywhere near that amount of money to get a hold of it. But with that guys, it's going to wrap up this episode of Play It Through. I'd like to thank you for watching, and of course I hope you enjoyed.